Welcome back to The Truth About the Market. I'm Jason Zilberbrand, president of VREF Aircraft Value Reference, longtime aviation appraiser, and someone who has spent over 3 decades deep inside this industry. I've worked with everybody from celebrity owners to Fortune 50 flight departments. I've testified as an expert witness in federal litigation, and I've seen more market cycles than I can count. And today we're going to do something a little different. Instead of me giving you my perspective, I'm handing the mic, well, metaphorically anyway, to you, our customers. Everyone wants to know what everyone else is really thinking, and chances are you're not alone in your opinion of how healthy the markets really are. So we recently asked our clients and contacts across the industry to tell us what they're seeing, how they're feeling about the market, and what their biggest concerns are right now. The results are packed with useful insights, and today's episode is all about unpacking those responses. We'll cover sentiment, supply and demand, financing, operating costs, maintenance and upgrades. We'll even talk about the regional differences and, most importantly, what you all actually want in this market. So let's start with the big picture. How are people feeling about the market right now? From the survey, we saw a split. It was pretty decisive. Roughly a third of our respondents said that they were optimistic about the next 12 months. Another third said that they were very cautious, and the final third leaned towards pessimistic. Optimists pointed to stabilization, that prices aren't spiking the way that they were a couple of years ago, and that buyers are starting to feel like that they have more leverage. The cautious group said, look, we see a lot of opportunities, but we're worried about the costs, we're worried about the financing, and we're really worried about the global economy. And the pessimists, their message was very clear. There's too much uncertainty, and we're going to sit on the sidelines until things become clear. And this mirrors what we've seen historically in aviation. Markets move in cycles, and customer confidence often lags behind the data. What stood out is that this sentiment is evenly distributed, meaning there's no overwhelming consensus. That by itself says a lot about how transitional this moment really feels. Many brokers I speak to on a regular basis are saying the exact same thing, that savvy buyers are sitting on the sidelines waiting for the right time to jump in. And that stagnation is really what's leading to what I think we should talk about next, which is the white elephant in the room, inventory. It's one of the most common themes in the survey. Inventory just keeps coming up over and over and over again. Customers are noticing more aircraft on the market than this time last year. About 60% of our respondents said that they're seeing more options when they go shopping. And by the way, we got roughly 1,000 people to respond to our survey, so these aren't just a couple opinions. This really is a very solid sampling or a cross-section of our industry, from piston operators to business jet operators across the board. What people are really saying is that because the prices aren't necessarily dropping, but there's a lot more inventory on the board, buyers are feeling a lot less pressure to make quick, snap decisions. One client put it to me this way. He said, last year I felt like I had 24 hours to make an offer or the airplane would be gone. Now I can take a week, do my homework, and still be in the game. And I think that that's a really major theme, I guess, through our survey. A lot of folks are saying this, that they're having more time to negotiate, that they don't feel this pressure to make an immediate offer on an aircraft. For sellers, though, the story is different. Days on market are stretching out. Several respondents reported that aircraft are sitting for 3 to 6 months with limited serious offers, and that's a shift from the pandemic frenzy when aircraft were selling almost instantly just a few years ago. If you watch the price reductions, and the time on the market is very real, unless you're priced aggressively, you're going to find it rather difficult to attract buyers. And I think that that's something that you can really look at right now. Go to your emails, see how many price reductions there are, and watch those markets. By segment, the light jets and piston aircraft are still moving. I guess relatively quickly compared to everything else, but I guess that could be, that should be taken with a grain of salt. Things are taking a lot longer right now to sell. Midsize and heavy aircraft, or the heavy jets, are seeing a lot of softness in the market. And customers specifically pointed to the G550 and G650 markets as being under pressure, mainly because the replacement models are arriving faster, pulling potential buyers away, creating a ton of trade-ins. And VREF has seen prices drop rather substantially in these markets as well. So your gut check is correct. Things are changing. And if you were in the market for a 550, you're in luck, because I think the last time I checked, there were 140 of them for sale, which is just an astronomical number. It's going to be interesting to see, how this supply chain is going to be equalized by the demand. In other words, I don't know that we'll find 140 people or companies to sell these aircraft to. So the supply and demand balance is shifting. It's still active. It's definitely not anywhere near as overheated. And this means you have options. Sorting through those options now seems to be the challenge. And if there's one area that really jumped off the page in the survey, it was financing and operating costs. Nearly every single respondent flagged higher borrowing costs as a challenge. Interest rates have gone up. Banks are more cautious about aviation lending. Several clients said that banks are requiring much larger down payments, and they're being very strict with loan to value ratios. And for example, one client said in 2021, they financed with 85% loan to value with no issue. This year, the bank came back and said 70% was the max. They also said that the interest rate was 2 points higher. And on top of that, I think the fixed costs are weighing heavily on people's minds. Insurance premiums, hangar rents, crew salaries were all consistently mentioned as rising faster than expected. Variable costs, fuel, maintenance reserves, even de-icing, it continues to bite and surprise, especially first-time owners. So for private owners, this means fewer discretionary hours are being flown. For corporate operators, it means looking harder at cost-sharing, partnerships, or fractional alternatives. Folks, the pressure is real. It's shaping decision-making. Buyers are more cautious. Sellers are adjusting expectations. And all of this is happening rather quick as affordability tightens. And it's interesting to note that while owners of aircraft are more budget conscious these days, the charter market is flourishing. I guess more people can afford to fly privately, and once you get used to that red carpet ride, it gets really hard to go back to Southwest. With that being said, the appetite for charter hours seems to be insatiable, whereas finding people to actually purchase these aircraft outright is getting a little bit more difficult. Hey, by the way, did you know that VREF completes more appraisals than any other firm in aviation? With empirical data on the entire market and over 30 years of hands-on experience, don't rely on somebody taking a guess. Visit vref.com and let us know how we can help. And if I can be of any personal help, feel free to email me directly, jason@vref.com. Another theme in our survey was maintenance and upgrades. And this is kind of a segue from the last theme that we were talking about. But many of you have said that avionics are both a priority and a major headache. One client said he can't put his aircraft on the market until he updates his panel. And buyers today are looking for integrated WAS and glass cockpits. But the quotes he's getting are $150,000 to $200,000. And on top of that, the shop can't even get him in for 6 months. That frustration was echoed by operators across the board, either waiting on parts or stuck in scheduling backlogs. Delays at MROs are pushing planned upgrades even further out. That downtime creates operational stress and uncertainty. And I'm seeing it rather frequently. A lot of people are having a very difficult time with scheduling maintenance. So I guess the lesson to be learned here is you can never be too proactive. If you have maintenance coming up, jump on it, because you don't want to be surprised, negatively anyway. Another topic that came up with maintenance was engine programs. This actually came up repeatedly, and I'm kind of surprised, especially in today's day and age. But customers are very split. Some of them love the predictability. Others see the programs as way too expensive. There was one broad agreement that buyers strongly prefer aircraft on programs, and sellers without them are taking a major haircut on price. And it's pay now or pay later, folks. There's no magic wand here. There's no formulas. If you don't have your engines on a program and your maintenance is coming due, a buyer is going to beat you up till the cows come home if you can get them interested at all. And the reason being is what we just talked about. How can you expect a buyer to buy your aircraft, then go and schedule maintenance, then put it down for what could be 6 months and pay for those events? Then those events are going to wind up being 15 to 20% higher than what was budgeted. It's a no-win situation. So if you're selling an aircraft in that situation, you got to get out in front of it. And there are alternatives. We've talked about this in other podcasts. There's deferred programs, although sometimes you don't have a choice. Deferred is better than nothing. And I would certainly look at those options if you're dealing with an aircraft that is facing major engine maintenance. And, and overall maintenance and upgrades are shaping marketability as much as anything else. And the reason being is because people don't want to go ahead and buy an airplane and then go put it down for 6 to 9 months if they can even find a shop that'll be willing to do the work. And with inflation and tariffs and the uncertainty as to how much something's going to actually cost, it's creating budgetary nightmares across the board. Let's switch horses a little bit. Let's talk about geography. This is something that doesn't come up very often, at least in my conversations, just because we're very focused in the United States, but we have clients all across the globe. And respondents from the U.S. were very focused heavily on financing, concerned about interest rates, cash flow, the broader economy. While in Europe, sustainability and environmental regulations were the top complaints and issues that people were concerned about. Several clients in Europe said that fuel costs and emission concerns are influencing their purchase decisions. Read between the lines. If we aren't able to, deal with sustainability and environmental regulations maturely and consciously of what's going on globally, it is going to lead to fewer and fewer people willing to buy aircraft in Europe, especially with what's been going on with demonstrations and a lot of people's property being destroyed over or these conversations and these themes. In Latin America, the concerns were availability of parts, as well as qualified technicians and mechanics. They were frequently talking about downtime as the biggest risk. And with fewer and fewer people to go to get aircraft maintained in that area, it's becoming a really big deal. Latin Americans are being forced now to go to other parts of the world for service. In the Middle East and Asia, the emphasis was on access, availability of newer models, their willingness to pay premiums if they have to get the latest technology. These are the emerging markets. The Middle East is very hot with growth right now. A lot of the manufacturers are focused on that market, and it makes sense. But what's interesting here is that while the global market is interconnected, the pain points vary by region. And that helps explain why certain types of aircraft remain strong in certain parts of the world, while in others, it's very soft. So what do customers actually want right now? The survey made this crystal clear: transparency in pricing. People are tired of chasing listings that don't reflect reality or for aircraft that are really not for sale. We talk about this all the time. We see people that list airplanes for sale, sometimes with no ability to even provide you an asking price. And I think that that's really what's causing this issue for people. If you're going to list your plane, answer the phone, send people the information, it takes two to tango. And I can understand why buyers get frustrated when sellers are not easy to work with. The flip side that is that, you have to put yourself in the seller's shoes. A lot of buyers kick tires. A lot of sellers, especially in the smaller aircraft markets, especially if they're listing it on their own, will face the same repetitive questions over and over and over again. And so some of that frustration is because they're not a broker and they weren't really prepared to deal with how to handle buyers, right? And that's a really big reason why people should consider hiring a broker, just for that. Another thing the survey made crystal clear is that customers want certainty in these transactions, right? They want fewer surprises during pre-buys. They want discrepancies with logbooks or missing records. They want clarity. They want to know about it beforehand. They want to know about damage history before they go to the pre-buy. And they want less threats of people pulling the plug or going to another buyer if they don't move immediately. Flexibility in financing, whether it's a better loan-to-value ratio or a creative lease structure or a competitive rate, Buyers want lenders to embrace aviation. And of course, I agree. I think aviation is fantastic. Of course, it's a complex lending situation. But at the end of the day, we're here to assist lenders. If there is a bank or a lender that has an issue, doesn't understand the technology, or you're thinking, God, this is a really stupid question, no one's going to help me, call me. I will help you. I promise you. I do it all the time. Well-maintained aircraft, not just cosmetically upgraded, but truly current. People want turnkey planes. They don't want an aircraft that's been worked on by 20 people, flipped 5 times over the last 3 years. They want pedigree, and they want transparency, and they want dependability. On the flip side, here's what's been frustrating you the most: pricing volatility. We hear it all the time. Values are moving too quickly. They're too difficult to track. That's actually not the case. There are never, at least I've never seen a situation in aviation, with the exception of COVID and the exception of a couple months, things have never moved too fast for us to track. I think what the issue is that a lot of people bought their planes during that COVID boom. And so they're having a real hard time understanding that this market is cyclical and that aircraft values go up and down. But if you did buy your plane during, a premium market, you are going to be shocked by what the aircraft is probably worth today. Not in every case, but certainly in most. They want, so what these other frustrating issues are actually kind of, I won't say that they're humorous, but I mean, because I've lived this for decades, right? They want inventory confusion to go away. Who doesn't? Duplicate listings, unclear specs, outdated ads. I can't tell you how many times I go to controller, I'll see the same airplane listed by multiple people. Who has the listing? Is it really for sale? Sometimes good luck finding out. They're using a file photo at best. There's no serial number. There's no tail number. Sometimes it's the seller's fault. They went and gave the deal to 25 brokers, and those 25 brokers are all now trying to sell the same airplane. But the confusion with inventory is real. I think it would be fantastic if instead of controller and trade a plane, looking to the brokers to do this, that maybe they take this upon themselves and clean up their databases a little bit. So if stuff is outdated, it's removed. Anyway, I digress, but I will say if a plane's been on the market for 300 days, it's probably not for sale. And if it is legitimately for sale, it's priced too high. The last thing that I think people were really talking about in terms of what frustrates them is pre-buy findings and how inspection surprises tend to blow up deals, especially late in the game. I think regardless of the market, that's always going to be something that is unfortunately uncontrollable. We can't control what happens during an inspection, nor do we want to. We want buyers to be comfortable that somebody is looking out for them in their best interest. Maintenance facilities are getting paid to find things that are broken, right? So if you find something that's that big that blows up the deal, and I guess a good example of that would be corrosion, it's a horrible situation, but I guess at the end of the day, better the deal blows up than winds up in a courtroom. Sellers, they're looking for anyone that will put an offer in writing. And really what's going on today in this market, especially considering that we're in the beginning of the fourth quarter, and this is usually the busiest time of the year, I think a lot of brokers are frustrated. It's been slow. A lot of buyers are kicking tires. Non-committal is a word I hear a lot. So, taken together, this tells us customers are looking for stability. In a world of rising costs and shifting market conditions, certainty and clarity are the new currency. So where does this leave us heading into the next 12 months? And really, where does this leave us going to the next 4? Where are we headed into the balance of the year? I mean, based on your survey responses, the market is absolutely in a transitional phase. Buyers are gaining leverage, sellers are recalibrating, and everyone is feeling the weight of higher costs. The good news is most respondents don't see a collapse. Instead, they see a normalization, a return to a more balanced market where conditions are, well, for a lack of a better term, balanced after all the wild swings we went through the past few years. And that means that opportunities are going to exist, especially for well-informed buyers who understand the cost structure and for sellers willing to price aircraft realistically to market. So what's the takeaway? Keep your eyes open, stay patient, understand that the market is shifting right beneath our feet. And it's really not in a way that, from where I sit, that signals any reason to panic. These are very normal cyclical situations we're dealing with. Want the full survey and my deep dive analysis? Go to vref.com/results and get the complete picture. So let's talk a little bit about resale and purchase and negotiation strategy. Because at the end of the day, the survey really, I think, said a lot about remarketing times. So this is how to interpret it. Anything under 4 months is what we would consider a seller's market, right? So if an aircraft market is hot enough where planes are getting listed and they're selling under 4 months, and I'm going to go over a bunch of models where that's the case, then that is what we would consider a seller's market. Buyers have to be ready to act quickly. Sellers can command the asking price. The aircraft in this market are typically closing for the ask and not selling at discounts. The next bracket is really that 5 to 9 month time frame, right? These aircraft that sit on the market that long are what we would consider to be a normalized market today. It's balanced. Buyers have time to do their due diligence. Sellers don't have to panic. The aircraft's going to sell as long as it's priced to market and not overpriced by 20%. And I think a lot of folks in this market would probably see a 10 to 15% asking price to closing price type of negotiation. Anything over 10 months. If the airplane has been sitting for 10 months or longer, it's a buyer's market. Because the inventory is lingering, buyers have leverage. Sellers often have to adjust, their expectations to make a deal. Plus, once you factor in the long time it takes to resell, you're going to be facing additional maintenance, especially for large aircraft. This is often the reason why planes sit. Sellers refuse to accept the reality of the issue. If you have a large, older aircraft, it's got calendar events. It's got hourly events. You're trying to time the market, and buyers are just as savvy as you are. They understand what's coming due. Buyers are never going to pay a seller for their utilization in a soft market. So let's talk about which models are hot. And these are aircraft that are moving instantly or within weeks. So if you're buying, you need to get your financing lined up ahead of time. Don't think you can attempt to meet sellers' demands if you don't have your ducks in a row. And if you're selling, you're in the driver's seat. You can hold firm on pricing. You can expect strong offers, which sometimes comes before the aircraft is even listed. And what's really interesting is that these aircraft all have something in common. They either have the latest technology or they're their cabin class leaders for performance. So I'm going to go in order. The strongest market right now is the G700. There are none for sale. It's super hot. They sell immediately. From there, and keep in mind, we're only talking about aircraft that are 4 months and under, right? So these are aircraft where we would consider it a seller's market. So the next aircraft with the lowest amount of exposure time for resaleability is the TBM 960, followed by the Phenom 300E. And the E is only a month and a half of inventory out there, guys. I mean, that is nothing. These aircraft are selling quick. Praetor 600s, there's only 2 months of inventory. Sovereign Pluses, 2.5 months of inventory. Challenger 350s and 3500s, 2.5 months of inventory. Gen 2 CJ4s, super popular aircraft, just under 3 months of inventory. And the Global 6000, again, just under 3 months of inventory. These are aircraft that are in demand. They're super hot. And regardless of what's going on in the market, people are buying them. The next step from here is the normal market. And these are aircraft that have marketability times or days on market of longer than 4 months and less than 10. And this is what we would call like the healthy middle ground. Buyers have time to evaluate these aircraft. Sellers can still close deals without too much discounting. The negotiation is fair. Both sides walk away thinking they got a good, fair deal. Lenders also love this middle market. There's a ton of comps, tons of resources for maintenance, for pilots. The upgrade path is plentiful. And many of these aircraft are what we would call workhorses. especially the turboprops. So let's go through what we would call the normal market. And some of these are actually teetering on being, sellers markets, but because things are changing quickly, and certainly I think the market is continuing to slow down, I think it's very safe for us to categorize all this as a normalized market. The Citation 10 has about 4 months of inventory. The 10 plus, which is interesting here, has 6 months of inventory. So the market definitely thinks that there's better value in just a regular Citation 10. Challenger 300, just over 4 months of inventory. The Cheyenne 2XL, this is an airplane that doesn't get any respect. It's like Rodney Dangerfield. I can't tell you how many of these that come across my desk every week. Talk about a workhorse. This aircraft does phenomenal. Residual values, easy aircraft to maintain. Owners love them. Kinger 350i. It's another great performing airplane, a true workhorse. There's only about 4.5 months of inventory out there. The PC-12, the NGX, that's the latest and greatest. It's got 6 months of inventory. Certainly has been softening, but it's still an incredibly popular aircraft. The Meridian is right there as well, about 6 months of inventory. Those aircraft are older. They're often able to be purchased for a lot less than what you could buy a PC-12 or any of those other single-engine turboprops for. So it still is a very hot market. The Challenger 605, believe it or not, is right there. It's got 5 months of inventory. These aircraft are selling fairly quick, whereas the 650, for some strange reason, has about 8 months of inventory, and it's seeing a much softer market. The CJ3 Plus, the Bravo, and the Excel, those are your bread and butter, light entry level jets, and they all have about 7 months of inventory out there, which is very normal. And then to round it out is the Sovereign, 8.5 months of inventory. There is more inventory coming to market than I can probably report right now. I would say the Sovereign is slowing down a little, but it is at the tail end of a normal market. So if you're looking for a deal, what airplanes should you take a look at? And I like these aircraft because I think that there's some great buys here. These are aircraft that are sitting in some cases for extended periods of time. The inventory continues to go up, and that means that buyers have leverage, whether it's through price negotiations or by simply waiting the sellers out, right? So if you're in the market for one of these aircraft, patience pays off, and sellers, you got to be realistic and you got to be willing to discount. Many of these aircraft were the best of their class at a time, and now they're aged or they've been replaced. That doesn't make them unattractive. Actually, I think most people would never be able to tell the difference between some of these aircraft and their derivative replacements because their ramp presence is still there. And they're still really easy to operate for the most part, with the exception of one or two, and we'll talk about this. So if you're looking for a smoking deal, Challenger 604, well over a year of inventory out there. There's a lot of aircraft that have been sitting. You just want to make sure that you're buying something that you can actually fly and something that's not going to wind up being put right back into maintenance. Here's one that I think is really surprising how much inventory is out there. The Legacy 650, 30 months worth of inventory. 30. That's almost 3 years. So if you're looking for a long-range aircraft, the Legacy 650 is fantastic, and you can probably buy one much cheaper than its competitive models. Phenom 100E. Another plane that doesn't get as much respect as it probably should. There's almost 30 months of inventory out there. And the E is a very respectable aircraft. It's got a lot of technological improvements over the straight 100. And if you're looking for an entry-level jet, it's got a good track record. So the balance of this market should come as no surprise. The G650ER, it's getting softer by the day. There's over a year of inventory out there. The more 700s and soon to be 800s that get delivered, we should see more 650s coming to market, certainly putting the strain on trade-ins and how much the market can actually absorb. G200 is at 12 months, and I think with the G300 being announced, you're probably going to see that extended to maybe 15 or 18 months worth of inventory, and I think the 280 will be right behind it. The Falcon 900EX was once the darling child of the super midsize or long-range cabin class, has seen better days. There's well over 30 months of inventory. The 900 is one of those aircraft that it's just very expensive to maintain. It's not the plane you buy if it's your first aircraft. You need substantial experience operating Dassault aircraft if you're going to get yourself involved in a 20-year-old Falcon 900EX. And then the last market that I think is going to surprise people, and I kind of saved it for last for a reason. This one, I think people would be, if you go and do the research and go look, you're going to come back to me and say you were right. But it's the Cirrus SR22 turbos. It's soft. I think there are 150 or 160 G5s for sale. I mean, there's so many of them out there. You can get good deals. I'm not saying that people are going to be blowing them out the door. That's not happening. These aircraft are still selling, but you're not going to see premiums in that market. And I think the sellers, especially the inventory dealers of those aircraft, are very realistic. So if you're looking for a deal, that would be a plane that I would potentially look at. So how do you use all this in practice, right? I mean, I think it's great if you're targeting a seller's market, you just got to act fast. You got to be decisive. If you're in a normal market, you have to approach negotiations with balance. You have to be fair. You also have to recognize the fact that if you find the aircraft of your dreams, and let's say it checks off 80% of your boxes for your wish list, you should pull the trigger. Because I think the grass is always greener is what causes a lot of buyers to regret not pulling the trigger. And I certainly see this on the low end of the market all the time. I can't tell you how many people call me and say, I should have bought that plane. I can't find anything else that's even close. So if you're looking at a plane and it checks off most of the boxes, go for it. Obviously, you need to do your due diligence, but sometimes waiting for that perfect aircraft, that's what hurts you because there's no such thing. If you're shopping in a buyer's market, you got to use time as your ally. You can negotiate aggressively, or you can just wait it out. Let the right deal come to you. So this wraps up episode 6 of What the Market is Really Saying. I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who responded to our survey. Your feedback is what makes episodes like this possible. I think the industry benefits from hearing directly what customers are experiencing on the ground. If you didn't get a chance to respond this time, keep an eye out. We'll be running more surveys in the future. And remember, your voice matters. We want to hear what you have to say. You just heard the highlights. Want the full survey and my detailed read on what it means for pricing, financing, and timing your next move? Hit vref.com/results. It's all there. Charts, takeaways, and model-specific notes so you can negotiate with facts, not chatter. If you make decisions based on data, not hunches, go to vref.com/results. And if we can assist in any of your valuation needs, please visit us at vref.com. Thanks for listening. I'm Jason Zilberbrand, and this is The Truth About the Market.